So hello everyone, I'm Ruben Campos. I teach here in ethnic studies and I run the Manoa Political Internship Program. The Manoa Political Internship Program has been running for some 50 years. The program is, I'll go over like broadly, but my role in it has really been trying to update it after 50 years of being organized in the same way. So a lot of the outreach and onboarding practices are brand new. So please, as you go through this orientation, feel free to give very critical feedback on it, right? So it has definitely been my 5-year goal to make this process easier for students to better prepare you all for what's the MPIN application process is. But of course, I'm doing it from one side. So, and I'm doing it from a very particular generation, right? So if you all see different ways in which this whole thing can work better for you, please let me know. That would be very helpful to all future students. So first we're going to go over what or why the Manoa Political Internship Program is beneficial. And I know that if you're here, it's most likely you already imagine internships are going to be special or important for you. But the reason I want to go over why they are important is because for you all to know what experiential learning really contributes is going to actually help you in the application process and in the communication and interviewing process later on. And I'll explain that. Spoiler note or spoiler alert, it's because a lot of the offices, when they receive students interviewing, students have given answers of why the internship program is important to them. They kind of give half of an answer and don't really have a full and complete way of articulating how important this experience could be to developing their career, right? So hopefully, me reviewing why experiential learning is important will motivate you all to start thinking through that and personalizing some of that information so that in your internship, you're able to articulate that and focus on those kinds of objectives. And then we'll go over the specifics of the program, some of the requirements, some of the duties and responsibilities that you can look forward to, and maybe some of the ways that you will apply this program and its outcomes to your specific career path, right? And then we are going to discuss planning and preparing. From now until you get placed in this internship, it is going to be a pretty constant job to plan and prepare to get this internship. And for those that get into the internship, that planning and preparing, of course, results in their placement in an office. It's my goal that the planning and preparing you do for this, whether or not you get one of the limited seats in Congress or at the judiciary offices, that the planning and preparing you're doing for this program result in something that you can then turn somewhere else, right? So that the work you put into applying now, regardless of whether you get the internship, is valuable to you in the long run. And then we're going to go over the specific elements of the application process, which are your resume and transcript, your letters of recommendation, your political issue statement, right? Those 4 pieces are going to be super helpful in if we can think about those things as one key piece, right? As one, not key piece, as one interrelated dossier of how you are presenting yourself to these political offices. And instead of thinking about these as separate items, really thinking about what each of these elements does to speak for you, right? And what it does as a tool that you can use to advocate for your competitive placement, right? There are some other kinds of items in here, the free writing and rehearsing, which we won't get into today, but I will go over those with you to hopefully motivate you to, again, prepare and plan for your eventual application, which is coming very soon. right? The free writing and rehearsing and reflecting will be an important thing for you to do after you leave this room, right? Because most frankly, the application process, the application and placement process is getting increasingly more competitive, right? So you're going to have to figure out how to really stand out and really put your best work forward to find a placement. Because ultimately, the final judge of who places you is going to be the offices themselves. It's not just going to be me or Dr. Nitz. It's going to be the offices themselves. And they're very serious about this, but that is what we are going to do. So as I mentioned, hopefully you all understand that experiential learning is a process of learning by experiencing, thinking, reflecting, and acting. It is connecting the theories and knowledge you learned in classroom to real world situations. When you are thinking about the internship that is approaching, really take time to reflect on what this thing is doing for you. One of the primary issues that a lot of students face early in their application process, when we ask them questions like, why do you want this internship, is the very simple answer of, I just want to strengthen my resume. I just want to look good for future careers, right? Certainly that is a primary motivation for all of us, except for that is more of the external reward. When in this preparatory time, really try to think and take your educational experience as something that you are doing for yourself, that you're advocating and building a career path for yourself using specific kinds of knowledge and experiences, right? The classroom experiences that you have, the time you're spending in whatever your major might be, are giving you really strong theoretical knowledge. They're giving you opportunities to practice critical thinking and dialogue in a academic and cultural sphere, right? But they don't necessarily give you the real world experience that the offices will require of you. Certainly, you've had experience writing papers and discussing things in seminars, but the offices of political governance are far more interested in your ability to manage complex projects, to write emails in real time, to respond to a direct request from a team and to turn that into something real, right? Your job, as you're thinking about this experiential learning process, is to predict what these offices are going to do for your educational experience, how they're going to help you grow on multiple levels. Internships can have on you is, of course, like endless, right? The outcomes that we've had students getting jobs out of this is a pretty high rate. Students take these internships and then get asked to come back. The students take one internship and then they realize they want to do another internship. So experiential learning has a very high impact on your career. But again, it's important for you to be able to articulate that to the offices when it comes up. So do some of that kinds of things, right? Do think about whatever your major is, why does it benefit from having an internship, right? And the truth is you get to be as creative in your thinking as you want to be, because there is no one right answer for you and your personal goals and objectives. But if you can't articulate and advocate for those particular goals and objectives and fit how this experiential learning is going to contribute to that, then it's very unlikely that the offices are going to see that potential within you, right? To come back to this, no matter what your degree program, an internship will give you hands-on experience. practicing critical skills like communication, problem solving, and project management. Again, the offices where you are going have many different jobs, responsibilities, and tasks that you can take advantage of. The interns that go, different offices hand out different jobs, but some of our more successful interns have been those that once they got there, understood the kinds of work and duties and responsibilities that they were required, then kind of built on that and said, okay, I can handle constituent services, getting on the phone for so many hours, doing that. I have that skill down. Is there something else that I can experience? Interns are never meant to replace paid workers in any office. Interns are supposed to be given a range of experiences that will contribute to their overall education. Knowing that, hopefully, will let you advocate for yourself in these offices to take on more responsibilities, right? Our political offices know this very well and will give you a broad range of experiences, but in any other internship, it's okay to stand up for yourself and saying, I want more experience than this one job that I've already mastered, right? Of course, humbly and within the framework of what they're able to give you. But overall, that is the point of an intern, is to have a broad range of experiences and finding different ways to apply your major program and apply your different skills to new experiences. So no matter your career goals, a political internship will empower you to be an active participant shaping your community through civic engagement. The offices are very interested in having non-political science students in their offices. Not to say that they don't want political science students, but what I want to point out is that just being a political science student isn't enough, right? Meaning they don't need policy conks, people who are just invested in high political theory, right? They're also interested in like psychology students who can bring unique perspectives to the field, right? They know broadly that science, social sciences, and any college student is very interested in having impact on solutions, that they're here for a certain reason. So if you don't know too much about civics or how government works, you're obviously maybe should do like some not 101 level YouTube university studies of the offices which you're applying to. We'll get to that later. But ultimately, it's okay to really turn into your major program and to think through those and use those as a creative reservoir of, for instance, what your passion is. So for psychology, for instance, mental health, if that is a like major focus of yours, then writing on that in your essays and how governmental like policies impact that is going to be a great and perfect essay, right? Economics, if that is, even though it's not your primary major or if it's your focus, bringing an economics perspective to any social issue is going to really enliven and strengthen your voice, right? And of course, American studies, you have a broad range of things that you can draw from that might be the passion and reason for your advancement in education, right? Rely on those kinds of things as a way to kind of strengthen who you are. I won't go over too long on these kinds of things, the specifics of the program, mostly because a lot of it is outlined on the website. But ultimately, there are 4 seats are available in the offices of our state Senate and House representatives. Interns receive a scholarship to cover 12 credits of in-state tuition, shared dorm housing just blocks away from Capitol Hill. The distance might change, as we've learned that the dorm housing is far more expensive than it used to be. So you might be a train ride away from DC's the Capitol Hill buildings where you're going to be, but that'll all change. You'll get all sort of information. It also covers a round trip flight to DC and a small living stipend. All of our offices in DC now pay their interns. So you will have to still pretty much live off of rice and top ramen while you are there because it is expensive, but you will have financial support while you are there. Start saving though, still, because it's like full new set of wardrobe, like professional clothes can be expensive out there. For those of you all who are interested in interning in Oahu, there are seats available in the district offices of our state senate and house representatives. So there are 3 to 4 in that. The offices of the governor and lieutenant governor accept intermittently. The public defender and prosecuting attorney's offices, they also accept interns with their special, their chief of staff, their chiefs. Anyways, they have different offices that accept. So you may be in like family law or something like, they spread you around. And then several legislative offices also accept interns during the spring that you are applying for. These internships cover the cost of 6 credits in state tuition, and depending on and a little bit more for like commuting, which ranges. So like if, for instance, your internship or your credits are going to cost $3,000, we give like $3,200 or something as just kind of a little extra bonus for that. One of the major things that you must understand is all of these scholarships will always be for in-state tuition and be adjusted for your actual cost of attendance, which is something that our office doesn't control, but the financial aid offices control. So if we put $16,000 in every one of our Washington, D.C. students' accounts, the financial aid offices will say, cool, we immediately take what their tuition cost is and give them the rest depending on what their actual cost of attendance is. That is something that is worked out through FAFSA. That is something that's worked out in conversation with Pell Grants and other kinds of scholarships. So every one of you will have a very different financial aid journey depending on your placement. So as you get closer to this an application, it's a very good idea to start better understanding where your financial aid package positions you and how the MPIN program would impact your cost of attendance. And the moment you do get a placement and that scholarship fund kind of goes in to be in immediate contact with financial aid to say, hey, I'm part of the Mānoa Political Internship Program. The funds I'm receiving are part of that. I'm going to be living off of campus. And you will have to kind of advocate for yourself that they don't adjust your individual financial aid in a particular way, right? Of course, we will be there to kind of help support you in a certain way, but you will absolutely have to advocate for your individual need in the face of financial aid, right? That is, I'm warning right from the very beginning, something that is a difficult process after placement, right? For some students, it just works out, no problem. They never notice it. But for some, there is a kind of delayed impact where you receive financial aid one semester and then suddenly your numbers have changed to the next semester. And it's not something that we at the program level can really prepare for without your help. We'll, of course, assist you once we know things are going on and changing. We can try to reach out to financial aid or support you in that way. But ultimately, it will kind of come down to you advocating for yourself, right? So, the difference between Washington, D.C. and Oahu is also not just in terms of the financial aid packages, but also in the kinds of experiences you'll have at either one of these levels. Okay. Our Washington, D.C. students, they have a very exciting and incredible experience, but some of the offices don't give them very complex work, right? They may be just doing constituent services and responding to certain kinds of emails. They might just be giving tours. Some offices are a little more proactive than others. I've heard Case's office is quite strict in how they handle and use their interns. Then our local students our students who come through to the local offices, they have often gotten involved in very like detailed, very intensive programs and tasks with their offices and have been loaded with a lot of responsibility, right? So depending on what your interest is, well, there's really no telling what the offices are going to hand you, but hopefully if you're interested in the overall process, you'll be ready for it anyway. This is a very broad timeline, but I did want to take some time that you all are right now attending an early interest orientation. It's not so early anymore. That was actually last semester. But in the next couple of weeks, since you are going to be applying September 15th, it's a really good idea to already schedule some time with your advisors to let them know of a flexible credit load. The application process can take almost until the week before your placement. Because the offices can take so long to decide who they want, there is a possibility that you're not going to know whether you're placed or not for especially the local internships until like a week or two before the start of the semester, which means that you need to plan your schedule to accommodate that. Plan your schedule to say, if I get this internship, I know which 2 classes or which 4 classes I'm going to be dropping and which classes I will immediately need to apply for. And I'll fill that in. You don't actually need to apply to get into some of the classes because we know you're in the program. We automatically add you to the program. But still, just keep in mind with your advisors that I know I'm going to need to take these 12 credits for my full-time internship or these 6 credits for my half-time internship, and you need to be able to flexibly adjust your schedule whether you get it or don't, right? If you get it, of course, you're dropping classes and adding others, right? If you don't get it, you need to make sure that you have an immediate group of classes that you know you can take so that you can still complete your degree program in time. Does that make sense, right? It's going to be stressful, right? But now you know, hopefully that alleviates some of the kinds of stressors. And also just know that that experience is not just yours. Every student, unfortunately, has to go through this. Am I going to get it or not? I'm, of course, trying to close that gap of the timeline at which the offices make their decisions, but ultimately it is their prerogative for who and when they do that time. You should now, knowing that you're already applying to the Mānoa Political Internship, already kind of know who you are going to be asking for your letters of recommendation. The applications are due September 15th. Your letters of recommendation are also due September 15th, okay? There is a grace period where if your professors don't get them in on that time, don't stress, you're not booted from the program because of their deadline, but it does mean at some point then you're gonna have to start nudging them. And so it's much better to let them know that if possible, can you have it in by September 15th? You will be asked for two letters of recommendation. One, of academic letter of recommendation, so a professor or somebody that you have kind of worked with in an academic setting here at UH. And then also somebody that you perhaps had career work experience or organizing experience with. If you have not had actual previous employment, don't stress. There are also creative ways of people that you can ask that might be able to represent you and speak to you. Later, I'll go over some tips and pointers on the kinds of people you're going to be wanting to ask and how you're going to be wanting to ask them for these letters. Because again, as much as you're advocating for yourself and preparing for these, the letters of recommendation are an increasingly important place that the offices will determine whether you're a good candidate, right? And the only way you can assure that those letters you do not get to see speak for you and speak highly of you is if you take the time to prepare your letter writers and give them all of the tools they need to write you a good and strong recommendation, right? So Your applications are due September 15th. If the way that the program works is, or the application process works, is the moment you apply on STAR is the moment when the STAR system sends out that letter of request, right? STAR will send a letter to your professional and academic advisors or mentors, or reference, I guess is the word, and will say, hey, this student is asking for a letter of recommendation. Can you submit? And they will submit directly to the STAR system. So, meaning you should apply early, or as I will explain later, apply with enough time for those professors to get that letter in. And when you ask them, to let them know of that like window so that they have the key information that they'll need, right? Immediately after you apply, you will schedule an interview with us. The interview has shifted from being more of a kind of gatekeeping interview where we're keeping students out and saying you're good or not good, and more of a rehearsal interview, a way for us to ask you very specific questions, which you will have access to, so that you can give a good, strong answer. We record those on Zoom and send those to the offices, right? So that initial rehearsal interview is not the final interview, but it is one that will kind of preliminarily determine whether the offices choose you to interview a second time, right? Because you have access to those interviews, make sure you spend the time rehearsing those questions and strengthening the kinds of answers to that, right? I feel like a hardcore salesman. Like this semester, we have access to a new AI, which our students hate. They were giving a shit. Oops, shouldn't be cussing. For using AI, there's some students created a AI interview platform where you can actually rehearse your interview with someone, and they'll give you, well, not someone, something, give you feedback, direct feedback. I have already created a platform for that. So after this, I will send you all that link so you can beta test it and rehearse the rehearsal questions. And it'll give you direct feedback on like, oh, use the STAR system, use this, you spoke about this, elevate this, and you all get to practice as many times as you want with the specific questions we're asking. Take advantage of that. But more than just using that, take advantage of any kinds of family, friend networks that you have who are going to be able to support you and give you an opportunity to rehearse and speak in these ways, which are very necessary, right? After you schedule those interviews with us, which is very quick, we send those interviews to the offices, and then we all play the waiting game. We wait patiently through their selection period. We tell the offices we need those interviews done by this time. Can you interview and meet the students at that time? There is a long seniority process where we send it first to Senator Schatz's office, who then sends the pool of applicants down to who's after Hirono's office, then Case's office, then Takuta's office. And every time at any one of those steps, you might be called for an interview. During that time, you must be attached to your email. The moment they ask for your time and availability, make yourself available, right? If they go weeks without contacting you, they get to do that, right? Because they're the offices. If you respond with anything, they get all the grace period because they're the ones in charge of it. You have to kind of respond as soon as you can. I try not to do too many negative anecdotes, but this is one of those important ones. Previously, students have waited throughout the summer. You all don't have the timeline or the benefit of waiting throughout the summer. It'll be very quickly. But in this case, student was not responding to their emails throughout the summer. Finally responded because the student was away out of town, fair enough, but didn't respond to their emails. The student did finally respond to the office, said, hey, we'd like to interview you. And then the student was like, well, I can't really do that time. Well, I'm finishing up my vacation and I won't be able to interview until this later date. And the office simply said, okay, no thanks, right? And that was an unfortunate, student was a great candidate, but unfortunately, because they didn't prioritize this in their calendars, they just didn't get the position, right? So this is one of those games that you'll just have to play of just be available, be super responsive on your emails, right? Once you learn of your placement, you'll register for your classes, and then you will start finalizing your housing and traveling plans. It will, especially for you all applying, if you're applying to Washington, D.C., this will not be another moment of high stress where you will have a financial package which is limited by the timeline and the delay of you got internship, you got the final placement. Once you get that final placement and we get confirmation from Shat's office or Takuta's office that you're going to DC or you're coming down here, we immediately put your name within STAR scholarships. STAR scholarships has to then release that information to financial aid office, which has to confirm with registrations office, which has to confirm with the parking office. It has to confirm with all these offices, all of this delay, which is keeping that money out of your hands. When the money finally comes into your bank accounts, e-refund is the moment you can, if you can do it beforehand, good for you. If you cannot, I'm sorry, you have to wait. Buy your housing ticket. Sorry, buy your ticket and pay your rent for Wish Housing. It's stressful, right? Because Wish Housing is going to be like, hey, you got to pay these fees, you got to pay this rent, we've got to do this. You're like, I don't have the money yet. You're planning to go to DC and you're looking at prices and you're thinking every day I spend not purchasing that ticket is a day that price is going up. Unfortunately, for our spring semester applicants, you all are under increased pressure to get, and unfortunately not in your control, right? And also not really in our control because there's so many different issues or offices involved. This will be a super big point of stress for you all, and I'm sorry. I will be here to commiserate with you and kind of help you, in the best way I can. But the best thing you can do really is be super on point with your email communication. And again, your communication with financial aid and all of these other kinds of offices that you will know, what's going on with that package and why it's getting released. If you haven't already done so, sign up for e-refund. That's one of those things that just every student should do right away so that any kinds of, what's it called? Financial aid package will immediately get bounced into your direct account instead of being mailed to your offices or house, sorry. Our local internships here require you to take 6 program credits. Those credits are, polls 3, 8, 6, and polls something else, right? Those are essentially just credit hour classes. 3 credits are just to fill your time because you have to remain full-time, which means you have to take full 12 credits. So 3 of those credits are just kind of like no work involved. It's kind of like free time, essentially. 3 credits are included in a seminar class, meaning that once a week, you'll have to meet with Dr. Larry Nitz and go over particular kinds of reading. So all of our program, including the DC, all required a seminar class. That is going to help you kind of get the best out of your educational experience there, where you're going to be doing specific readings and have some journaling assignments and maybe a final write-up and reflection, okay? Then your DC students, they're able to take an asynchronous class for 3 credits or a directed reading class in their program. So if you're in psychology and you want to take a directed reading with a professor, it's good to reach out to the professor and say, hey, I'm taking this internship. Is there a directed reading course that I can fill these credits in? A directed reading course would be just you and this professor kind of come up with a reading assignment or 2. that's related to, for instance, mental health and politics, or American studies and politics, economics and politics, and then you complete that. Our local students take 3 credits of the seminar courses, and then 3 credits that are they can be asynchronous or they can be on campus. However, for our local students, you do need 20 hours in office. So that means they're going to want maybe you to have Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays free to actually be in office from 9 to 5, and then a little couple hours on Friday to get your complete 20 hours a week. And then maybe 2 days online or on campus where you're focused on your studies. Those classes can be, of course, in any program, but the political science specific internship courses will be in political science, right? Which means you should also speak with if you're not in political science, speak with your academic advisors to make sure that you're still on time to graduate. I will suggest, though, that even if you're not on time to graduate, the internship program is worth it, right? Even if you're kind of delaying that process, because it is so beneficial. So yeah, and this is maybe one of those good things that I don't say enough here. In all of these situations, please immediately start advocating for yourself with your faculty and staff in your programs. The Mānoa Political Internship is available to all, and there are ways to make it count for even more if you kind of fight for yourself. And it's not even having to fight for yourself. It's just that a lot of the advisors and faculty and chairs don't know what you're going through, right? They don't know that you're applying to this, and don't know that, like, oh yeah, of course this thing should count for this student. Like, they're doing the work. This is cool. Let's help them out. You know what I mean? So reach out to people, reach out to your academic advisors, reach out to your undergraduate advisor and say, hey, I'm doing this thing. How can I make this count for more? And they should be very receptive to that. And I say should be because maybe some won't, but it is up to you to kind of find out and push for that for yourself. I will leave lots of room for questions at the end, so that if you don't have questions, you're able to leave. But I do want to go over some of the important parts of kind of how your application should come together. Because it always seems, as I'm going through applications, that students haven't really thought about some of these factors. And so, if you've already done an internship, maybe this is old to you, or if you've had parents that went through this, maybe you're all just aware and you can help give others pointers. But for me, I didn't have parents that went to college. And I did have older sisters that went to community colleges and then state schools. But neither of them really knew how to take advantage of a lot of these resources. And so I'm going to take some time to really think through a lot of these kind of professional moments. Please kind of take these for, not coming from someone that's a professional in career development or whatever, because there is a career center here, which hopefully you will take all of this and refine everything we're going here. But ultimately, we ask you for your transcript and your resume. These are not just busy work. These are not just documents that can speak for themselves. As you are collecting your transcript, really look at what that transcript says about you as an individual. How does it track you and your development? I look at transcripts and I get very confused. Unless I see obviously a good GPA is one thing, but if I see classes that are very interesting, or I see a kind of thematic growth of what kinds of courses you have taken, that is a good sign as I'm looking over these resumes that you have thought about your educational development, right? And again, if you have thought about your educational development and put together your classes in a very particular way, you need to be able to articulate that and defend that as something that is of value, right? So, for instance, if you're in political science and American studies has been an interest to you, really rely on pointing out or understanding how those American studies courses that you've chosen, those elective courses that you've chosen, kind of define your perspective and scope, right? As a possible source of interest, right? In terms of economics, macro, microeconomics, if you've taken those classes, try to rely on those and maybe use those, and we'll talk about how you can use them as kind of object lessons, right? So in interviews, as since you know that the offices ourselves will have these, you're always welcome to say, well, you might have noticed in my transcript, I focused on, this kind of American studies, or you might have noticed that in psychology, right? I've had experience in this kind of maybe service learning course, right? Or I have had a course in kind of large data set, survey techniques. I'm very capable of reading this kind of document, right? So your transcript as well as your resume are really kind of object lessons or objects, tools that you can use to show, not just tell. In interviews and in your writings, it's not just enough to say that I am a dedicated student. Your transcript is going to be the proof that says I am a dedicated student, and you can see that through my commitment to this, and this, right? Does that make sense, right? It becomes a piece of evidence, especially too with your resume. Resumes come in many different shapes and sizes, but they should all be specifically focused on the job you are aiming for, right? There has, for instance, not always to give negative examples, we had an incredibly well-experienced and passionate vet student, a student who had already spent years in the military and now was coming back, right? They had a crazy amount of experience working on these giant engineered machines, right? Pumps, and their resume had all of these certifications for some kind of mechanical device that like highly functional military people are able to fix. Doesn't make much sense for a particular office. However, the kinds of certifications and training, the kinds of commitment and career development that student could be reshaped and respoken about in a different kind of way, right? It can be proven on an resume in a different way, that they have gone through these kinds of training, which is evidence that they're able to learn quickly and effectively serve position, right? Students that have maybe only worked in the service industry and never had office experience, those kinds of students are perhaps very well suited to deal with constituent service, angry customers, the ways in which you shape and speak and write things into your resume, your resumes needs to highlight the kinds of skills that you think you are going to be able to bring to the office, right? Sometimes I see resumes where students will use that little panel. I'm here too. I'll turn Chris too. Students will put on their resumes kind of list of qualifications that they have, right? Good communicators, responsive to, great letter writers, whatever, and like diligent, and they'll have some adjectives on their resume. And none of those adjectives will be really connected to any of the experiences that they have on their resume, right? There won't be a clear line of like, you're a good communicator. Well, where's the proof of that on your resume? Again, there are many different templates and formations of how a resume can look. Make sure in whatever template you choose that you're making those connections obvious and apparent to sight, right? If there's a line in your resume for a specific and clear statement of purpose or statement of intent, make sure that speaks directly to the specific offices or experiences that you're going into, right? And this will partially mean, we'll get that in a second, but know which offices you're wanting to apply for. And these are government offices. They want certain kinds of skills. Take your resume to the Career Center, have them look it over and explain to them that that's the goal of this resume. You're applying to a very specific program, to very specific offices, and you want to highlight certain kinds of qualities about yourself, right? Take the time to do that and advocate for yourself in that way. Your letters of recommendation. Again, this is another opportunity that even though you are not in control of this, even though you're not in control of writing this, you still need to do everything you can to make sure that the letters of recommendation support the narrative that you're trying to create about you as an individual, right? So, professional and academic reference need time to write strong and supportive letters of recommendation. Make sure you ask them early and give them all the information they will need to support you. Tell them what you are applying to, why you think you're a great candidate, and how and when they can support you. Okay? More negative examples. I sometimes get requests for letters of recommendation from students who I haven't seen in a classroom in 2 years. I might barely remember this student, and I will, of course, say yes, but I'm always a little frustrated when I have to say, yes, I will write a letter for you, but who are you? I don't phrase it like that, but who are you? What is this for? And what do you want me to say in your letter of recommendation? When I say, what do you want me to say? I don't mean like write the letter for me. I mean, what kinds of qualifications should I speak to, right? So as you are asking professionals, professors, there you go. Introduce yourself formally, right? Hey, Professor so-and-so, we had this class together. I found that class to be incredibly enlightening in this particular way. It has motivated me to apply to a political internship program where I think I will be able to expand my experience or knowledge or professional skills in these specific ways. Can you please write me a letter of recommendation? The application or the letters of recommendation are due on this date. I will be applying on this date. You will have time, a window of opportunity to submit your letter of recommendation between these two dates. If in your letter, you agree, I think in your class, I exemplified these qualities. Can you please speak to them? Or something to those effects. But ultimately, you need to tell them, what you are applying to so that they know what kind of qualities they should write to, why you think you're a great candidate, right? So again, you have to give them evidence that you are great in this particular way, right? So for instance, if you are applying and your resume says that you're a great communicator, you might want to focus on a professor who you had an O-focused class on, and you did an exceptional oral project in that class, and tell them, hey, in my class, I think I demonstrated my ability to communicate complex issues in the class presentation, right? And so now you've made a kind of connection between your letter of recommendation, your resume, and your transcript. Now, all of these things are working together to speak to some kind of quality that you think you exemplify. Take time in understanding what those things are, right? Try to identify people that can speak to, again, those qualities that you can speak to, right? So sometimes we get letters of recommendation for your shift manager at Yard House. And unfortunately, those people aren't able to speak to all of the qualities that you might have, right? Or maybe the student didn't ask them in a certain way to speak to those kinds of things, right? So you need to figure out who you're asking and not just academically, but professional career kind letters and really guide them. So identify people that you know are you're going to be able to talk with and speak about these kinds of levels. And so if it is maybe you're you know the head chef and you were a line cook somewhere, you've got to kind of coach them to that, right? To speak to those kind of qualities. They might decide that like, oh, this person threw together like was able to chop and prep things super easy, but those kinds of qualities aren't really what you're looking for. So maybe coach that person to talk about your timeliness, your cleanliness, your ability to respond to high intensity situations, right? And again, if you haven't had a job outside of school, you're going to have to identify somebody that can speak to you at that professional level, which it's unspoken, and so I'll speak it. Letters of recommendation are a very kind of dialogic process. They're a very kind of conversational process. You're very well, at least from my perspective, and many other professors I know and other people, they really shouldn't just be like blind asks. Sorry to be ableist in that question, but they shouldn't just be kind of like, hey, can you get this thing, right? You are fully encouraged to negotiate or advocate that kind of relationship as you write these letters of like, hey, can you focus on these things? And like, if you don't mind, like, here are the things that you can focus on, right? So that people who maybe aren't, English speakers will be able to write from something imagining Portuguese and being able to kind of speak to that and then put that through a translator, and you can work them through that. I mean, especially if you have a good, strong relationship with the people. You can apply to this internship multiple times, and you can be an intern in this program multiple times. So we have had students go first intern here first in Washington, D.C. They got to Washington, D.C. their first attempt at application. The next semester, they applied again and got into a local office. You can do this program multiple times. So yeah, if this is you're applying for the spring one, but you're not going to apply, you can apply next semester. The applications are due on the 15th of September and the 15th of February every year, and every semester, and it's always applying for the next semester. This is the final or not the final one, but I will not spend too much on this political issue statement, aside from really pushing you all to write cohesively, clearly and cohesively. You are not writing these essays for a grade in a political science course. You are writing these essays to demonstrate your ability to communicate concisely about complex political issues. You are writing these essays to demonstrate your passion and understanding for the process of governance, right? So whatever political issue you choose, it should be one that you can speak to excitedly, passionately, and with good evidence-based research. One of the best essays we have ever read was not about climate change, which is a very common, or houselessness, which is a very commonly written essay. It was on public art. A student wrote an incredibly powerful short statement on why supporting public art was important. And they knew that one of the offices that they were applying to was actually involved in that kind of caucus or work group. And it was such a great essay to read because it was clear, concise, dealt with governance, and was partially linked to some of the work that the offices actually go through. So your political issue statement, again, should show, not just tell. A lot of students will write issues that say climate change is a problem, and I think the government should do something about it. but they don't ever actually, one, give good evidence-based research on the impacts of climate change or who it's impacting directly anyway. And then they also don't attune their essay to any specific office or when you are doing this kind of writing, it's your job to research the offices that you're applying to. And by the way, again, should have cleared this up. I need to add this to the earlier slides. When you're applying to the Mānoa Political Internship, you're essentially applying to all of them. So if you apply to the DC internship, we're still going to send your application to the local offices as well. So that you can kind of trickle down, right? That if you don't get into any of the DC ones, you still have an opportunity at some of the local offices, right?
Is that if I only applied for the DC one on STAR, it would still send to the Hawaii one, so that I still have to apply for the DC and the Hawaii one, because that was my plan of action.
Yes. So you can only apply to one, but stay in constant communication with me and say, you can say, oh, I don't want you to send it to any of the local offices, or please do send it along to the local offices. Or if you only apply to the Hawaii State one, let us know that you don't want it sent to DC, right? Because shit's crazy over there. Again, sorry for cussing. And that's been the option of some of our students recently. Like, nope, DC not going to happen. I just want to apply to the local offices, which makes sense, right? I mean, especially for our local students, like they're focused on here. So you can absolutely decide where those applications get sent, but for the most part, your application will be shopped around, right? And so, like I said, one student applied for the lieutenant governor's office and didn't get in there because they only had one seat. And then like 3 months later, one of the Senate offices said, hey, we still want a student. Can you send us others? I sent them that student's application and said they applied for this, but they said they'd go for anything else. Interested? The student got in at the other, right? And is taking advantage of the super. No, keep asking.
So in that case, if I were to apply for the DC one, this is a trickle down effect. But I think what I should say is a little bit more geared towards like Hawaii. Would that still work for the DC seats or would they feel as though we can applying for like the length?
Yeah. The DC application requires a second statement about like kind of your focus on specific offices, right? And so we're still negotiating, working out all those out, but I add notes to all of your dossiers that will explain that, right? So that if your political issue statement is for one thing, they're not going to ding you and being like, bleh. But I will say overall, make sure your political issue statements are attuned to the actual work of the primary place you're wanting to apply, right? And the focus of those, right? So for instance, the essays that the students that applied to the lieutenant governor's office were about issues that have nothing to do with the lieutenant governor or governor's role. And the offices were like, and this actually came up more in the interview, the offices were like, the student didn't really seem to know what our offices did, right? You all, as you are applying and preparing your applications, should know exactly what the offices are doing. Right? Every one of the people that you're possibly applying to, at least not in the legislature, you will know beforehand. And so you should research their websites a lot. Know what committees they're sitting on, know what kinds of values and goals and projects they are working on, and write essays to that effect. I also want to confirm that, your political values are not in consideration with these internships. Meaning, we had a student that came from, Colorado, and they had lobbied on behalf of some conservative politician. They applied to the Mānoa Political Internship Program and were still accepted in a Democratic office because the student, one, in their application, was able to clearly articulate that they were interested in the political process as a whole rather than one specific partisan line, right? But again, they were good about advocating that that was the case, right? So not play the game, but understand the consequences of your essays and how you're speaking to the different groups. But ultimately, I will say put a modicum of like trust in the fact that these political offices want any and all students and those that are best qualified, no matter their kind of political perspectives, right? To a degree. So so take that into consideration as you're writing and focusing your political issues, right? Statements. Again, try to remember that there are different writing styles for different groups of people. The offices, they want concise, smartly and clearly written things, right? For political science students, sometimes we get these essays that are so wrapped up in political theory that the offices is like, you're not going to be writing policy, get out of here. We don't need that, right? Sometimes when students from outside of political science are writing essays, they're writing more with far more pathos, far more feeling than the offices care to deal with, because they are writing specific policies and having more direct kind of like governance output forms of communication. So you're going to have to figure out what feels best for you, which means start writing your political issues early and go over them with friends and folks, the writing center and anybody else. And again, focusing on what the actual audience is of who you're speaking to. Go do your research to the particular offices that you would be applying to and tailor what you're writing about to the kinds of things they're actually engaged in, right? That you can get behind and say, oh, yeah, you know what? They're dealing with housing. I have a belief and thought about housing policy, and I want to learn more about it. And of course, in your essay, you're fully welcome or geography, right? My particular interest in geography is kinds of trends of militarism and the ways in which the U.S. government is completely, ruining lands and stuff. That's probably not going to write a good essay for getting an internship. But that's not a limitation, right? That's something that is a good way of practicing communicating out and around all of that with these essays. And finding opportunities to speak about any kind of political issue that you see as relevant. Immigration, for instance, would be one that, might be relevant to you, right? And or international education, right? Those are things that are impacting you directly, but that have a larger kind of policy consequence that you might be able to focus on. Email me on the side. I'm happy to review essays for all of you and just kind of give thumbs up, maybe focus on this and help you through that. But one of the major things on the website, you will find all of the questions that you will be asked in the preliminary interview. Start rehearsing those questions and notice that the way those questions are put together is built around the application process. So the first question gives you an opportunity to introduce yourself as a well-rounded and complete student. You're not just introducing yourself as an individual who likes, certain kinds of ice cream flavor. You're introducing yourself as an engaged and excited student that wants to learn more and grow through this program, right? Take that opportunity to introduce yourself as a professional person, put that identity first, right? Of course, pepper in all of those things that make you an exciting, fun, and gracious individual, but ultimately your introduction is a moment for you to put that foot forward, is that I'm here to interview, right? The second question focuses more on your transcript, right? Focuses on your education, focuses on the ways in which you have built yourself as a student, as somebody who has put a lot of thought into your education and higher education and growth, right? Put those kinds of things first and foremost, right? And I'm repeating myself now because I've set up this application process to be all of these points. The next part asks you about work experience. That is your opportunity to look at that resume, use that resume as an object, as evidence that you have great experience and past behavioral moments that put you forward as an exceptional candidate, right? Somebody that's going to bring useful skills into their office. The final question is about your essay. It's a moment for you to speak intellectually and intelligently about a passion issue that you have passion for, and that you can then speak to them in a way of like, I believe governance, I believe different communities have a particular impact in this or particular consequence, to show that you understand how social issues are worked out at the governmental level, right? Even if you're not planning on going into law school or going into government and instead going into nonprofit work, these are the moments for you to say, this experience, even though my goal is that, these experiences are going to help me get there, right? Or if your interest is working in policy, this is your opportunity to say, yeah, I want to be like, have the experience here working in the ledge. So because I'm very interested in writing policy. And all of these steps throughout the resume and transcript, throughout the letters of recommendation, political issue, and in that interview when we initially interview you, these are all opportunities for you to build a very specific story and advocate for yourself as a fully formed, like, human that is going to give something to these offices and get something that is beneficial to everybody, right? Stay humble, but speak up, right? Advocate for yourself and trust that you are smart and ready for this experience, right? No half stepping in this, right? The offices can smell that out and are always afterwards come back and say, yeah, some of the candidates just didn't seem to really have it figured out. And in all of those cases, unfortunately, when we have gone through these orientations and I've talked with students through that, they never really put in that extra step of like figuring it out, right? Figuring out all those connections. Nobody else can write those for you. There is a worksheet that is always in flux and always growing. It may or may not help you. Different students get different uses out of this worksheet, but it is going to push you to start thinking about some of these things that I have asked you to think about this time. And it gives you an opportunity to free write. There is no better experience than forcing yourself to write about these and make all the mistakes you can make now. Sit down with a friend and have them just cold ask you those questions. Set a timer, answer those questions for 5 minutes. Fumble, get confused, stutter through those kinds of questions. At least that's a good way for me to work, because I work improvisationally far stronger than I do by putting everything out and following a strict script. But I do script things too, because I know that's something else I need to backfill in all of that, right? Be prepared for any and all kinds of questions from these offices. We ask very specific questions. They're going to ask the standard office kinds of questions. But the reason and the preparation that I'm having you do here is going to be the best way for you to assure that when you are asked those questions, you spent the time actually thinking about them, right? And rehearsing them. Please feel free to email me directly with specific questions and links to documents of things that you're writing. I feel completely comfortable giving every student very specific advice on all of these because I'm not the one that makes the final decision on whether you get placed or not. The offices are. It's my job instead to, as an educator, to hopefully elevate every student that asks for help to a particular level of competitiveness. Again, I'm not the end all and be all, so use more resources. We have the Writing Center, which I believe is in QLC third floor. Or no, it's in Kuykendall. Look for the Writing Center. Look for the Career Center at the Queen Liliuokalani Center for Student Services and their website. They will have worksheets and other things so that your resume is the best it possibly can be. please feel free to go. Again, all of you, please email me directly with any kind of specific questions, either mpin@hawaii.edu. And that is it. Have a good day.